friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to another Ask Wrestle Juice. Once again, you guys have got a lot of great questions, and this week we've had quite a few moments in wrestling news, with CM Punk being out due to injury and a new interim champion about to be crowned at Forbidden Door, with MJF dropping his version of the pipe bomb, which got everybody talking in the world of wrestling. You guys have a bunch of questions about all that stuff. Let's dive into it. First up, from Zach Beckett. He says, with AEW crowning an interim champion in Punk's absence, does being interim champion even matter? He says he went to AEW's official page and they didn't count Sammy's interim TNT title reign. Wouldn't it just make more sense from a kayfabe aspect to want the real title instead? It sort of depends on the booking philosophy of the booker. Tony Khan seems to love the idea of interim champions and interim championships, and I think I know why. It's just a great way to sort of pop ratings in the moment. It's like, well, why bother not having a particular champion around when you could just crown an interim champion? It's what UFC does anyways, and I am actually a fan of it. Why not? It makes for a compelling angle on TV. Just do something. In terms of whether or not it matters, I don't know. It all sort of depends on the champion himself. So, like in the case of Mercedes Martinez, for example, she was interim Ring of Honor Women's Champion until she actually won the major championship. Now, where will this all fit in sort of history? Who knows? Who cares? Sammy's been TNT champion enough times. Does it really matter if he was interim champion or not? I don't know. In terms of what's going to happen now, yeah, if somebody who had never been champion before, let's say Eddie Kingston somehow wins the interim AEW World title and then loses to Punk at whenever Punk comes back, I would imagine before All Out, would that be just sort of an asterisk next to Eddie Kingston's name? Yes, that's why as a booker you probably don't want to do that, which is why I'm pretty sure Mox is going to end up being interim champion, because he was champion and he had a really long championship reign. So yeah, why not have it be Mox? It doesn't matter if he has an asterisk next to the interim championship because he's been champion already. There's a whole long sort of not lineage necessarily, but there's a history of interim champions in pro wrestling, and you know, it is what it is. It's an entertainment sport. It's a scripted sport. So like, does anything really matter? Does anything really matter in life? Anyways, let's move on. This is a good question, though. Let's see here. Tyreek says, with more and more people in AEW expressing their frustration, do you think AEW will stop being seen as the safe haven and instead become a heel promotion? I assume a heel promotion is in like, I don't know if this means like in kayfabe, like AEW is going to morph into sort of the establishment promotion in a way like WWE is. And you had people like CM Punk dropping the pipe bomb saying this place should be better, et cetera, et cetera. You can rail against the McMahons. Will AEW become that in kayfabe? I don't know. It depends on how hard they want to go with the sort of shoots. Like, you know, everybody that shows up talks about how much they love it there. And like for every one MJF, there's like, I don't know, 10 CM Punks who show up and they're like, oh my God, this place is so much better. They give me freedom, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. I think it would take a lot more than just MJF and a couple other wrestlers expressing frustration for AEW to be perceived of in the minds of the fans. Now, if Tony Khan ends up being a lot heavier of an on-screen presence and he elects to adopt a heel persona, then yeah, sure. Then AEW can then sort of morph into, you know, the establishment that wrestlers want to rail against. But I don't think they're going to go that way. I don't think that that's something that he's interested in doing. So no, I kind of feel like it's not going to become that. Let's see here. Betty Frame asks, with the new Warner Brothers executives in attendance, like, what is it? Warner Discovery now? Is that what it is? Betty says, do you think last night's show was the best approach for impressing them? Betty has said that they've heard that Kathleen Finch, CBO of Warner Discovery, I guess, isn't high on wrestling because her background's in HGTV and Food Network. As much as we love the MJF promo, was Mox getting color going too far for the new executives who aren't fans? So this is a great question. Honestly, it's a great question. I don't know though. I really don't. I mean, I guess it probably is a good idea because I'm not sure how much Tony Khan's going to want to compromise his vision for AEW. And isn't it better for him to just say, look, this is the most extreme version of what we are. MJF saying, you fucking mark, and we bleep it out. But it drawing all sorts of interest and it being a compelling storyline angle. Mox drawing blood is something we do pretty heavily on the show. Why not just show them what you are so that there's no ambiguity about it down the line? If you put on a family safe PG show for them off the bat, and then months later, Mox draws a bunch of color, and they're like, whoa, what is it? This is what we showed you. I think you probably just want to show them out for this is what it is. And this is the kind of ratings it does. So and this is kind of the interest it gets. I think that's kind of the way you want to go with that. Okay. Is that enough? All right. Let's see here. Moving on. John Davies says, hey, Steve, excluding Jade and Britt, do you think AEW has enough legitimate heels on their women's roster? Based on the current lineup, my brother and I are really struggling to think of credible opponents for Thunder Rosa's next feud. I think Thunder Rosa will probably end up losing the title to look, there's two options here. There's who Thunder Rosa should lose the title to and who she will lose the title to. I get the feeling it's going to be a heel Ruby Soho that takes the title from Thunder Rosa. I think it should be Jade Cargill. Jade should be double champion. Right now, she feels like the main attraction in the women's division. She's got that TBS title, which you would think is the mid-card title, but it's totally treated like the top title. And Jade should totally beat Thunder Rosa for that, making her, super champion. But I don't know if they're going to do that. I would be, I guess, kind of surprised if they would do that. So I think that, Ruby has been getting a little bit of shine lately. I was kind of surprised she didn't turn heel at the Owen tournament. And so, yeah, I feel like that might actually happen. She had that jacket that said a change is coming. I think it's going to happen sooner than later. She'll probably take that title off of Thunder Rosa. Deadpool Nerd with Max making ex-WWE guys point. Of course, MJF was talking about Tony signing up all these ex-WWE guys. Do you think that can be an issue with AEW going forward, putting more effort, money, and time into hiring ex-WWE guys and forgetting that homegrown talent? I get the feeling that it's all about analytics with Tony Khan, like what can sort of draw the most interest in his company, and if that means former WWE guys. I think the wave of former WWE talents like en masse going to AEW is sort of done with, because WWE, I think they're kind of done with big mass releases. So I don't think that's going to be a thing anymore. I think in a couple of years, you're going to get to the point where there's a fair trade-off between the two companies. But AEW's new. They need to draw interest. They need to draw eyeballs. And what better way to do that than to bring people over who already have an established brand name? And if you're a former AEW or if you're a homegrown AEW person, you gotta establish yourself. You have to make your mark. Look at who the champions are right now. Tag champions, AEW homegrown. Thunder Rosa, essentially AEW homegrown. I mean, I know she had a career before that, but she's not a ex-WWF person. Obviously, CM Punk made his biggest splash as WWE person, and his whole story's been, I'm coming back from WWE. I get that. And Mox, the interim champion, that's going to happen. Obviously, made his big splash in WWE. I get that. Scorpio Sky had a bigger name in AEW than he probably had a couple dark matches in WWE. So the majority of the champions are Jade Cargill, AEW homegrown, are AEW homegrown. No matter what, getting to the top is going to be rarefied air. So Brian Cage, who you can't really consider AEW homegrown because he's been doing it for ages before that, but he's not an ex-WWE guy either. He didn't show enough to get to the top. Ricky Starks, heavily, prominently featured on the program. Not going to call him an AEW homegrown guy because I saw him in NWA before that, but obviously he's not an ex-WWE guy. MJF draws the biggest, and I know he's the guy that we're talking about, but I feel like there are plenty of non-ex-WWE guys and gals getting the shine. So I don't really think it's an issue. I don't really think it's, I think that, yeah, if MJF saw guys like Malachi Black coming in and being misused, which compared to WWE, I think he's been better using AEW, but he has not been used nearly to the degree that he really should have been or he should be. Hopefully that'll change soon. I can understand if Malachi is getting a ton of money or Keith Lee and Strickland are getting a ton of money. But honestly, like Ruby, Lee, Strickland, those are all ex-WWE guys. They're not getting that much of a shine. Yes, they were on the pay-per-view recently, but none of them won their matches. They're not getting much of a shine. They're in the same boat as all those AEW homegrown stars. They have to figure out how to get their way to the top or impress to Tony. This is why I should be on the top. So I don't know. I kind of feel like it's a bit overblown, that ex-WWE issue. Let's see here. Moving on. Brian asks, would AEW benefit more to have more pay-per-views, like 6 instead of 4, to close some storylines earlier? I think AEW knows that a lot of their money is going to be coming from TV.
Sorry, could you say that?
Stop talking. AEW knows that a lot of their money, their big money deals, are going to be coming from TV. I think that the 4 pay-per-view schedule a year, 4 pay-per-view a year schedule, is a good one. It benefits both, making those pay-per-view special and making those big themed episodes of Dynamite feel special. I don't think it was a detriment that Kenny Omega won the main title on a regular episode of TV or a themed episode of TV. I thought that was fine. So no, I think I actually think it's totally fine, their current model. I kind of prefer 4 big pay-per-views a year. They're adding Forbidden Door. That'll probably end up being a yearly special event with New Japan. And then they have all their themed episodes. So no, I think they're doing okay. And I think that increases, their TV rights money as well. To be honest, it's kind of a smart move. Let's see here. Already answered that one. How about this one? Stephen Earl. This is a good question. Says, is there anything that could be done to make a shoot based in reality more believable? Example, why didn't they just shut off MJF's mic? So they did at the end, but I totally get your point. It is much more difficult to assume that MJF's going to go out there with a live mic and say everything he did, because they simply could have gone to commercial, got security, got him out of there, right? It's difficult to convince an already kind of jaded audience, because we've seen and heard of, thanks to like listicles from Parts Unknown, Cultaholic, et cetera, we used to do stuff that we're going on wrong. We've seen so many of these examples, whether you're watching it live or have read about it or watched a video about it after the fact. Wrestling was great. We've seen a lot of this stuff, so it's difficult to convince us that, oh man, he's really shooting from the hip here. This is real. This is real stuff. Removing him from the roster, I think, is a good idea. I think the best you could do is just try to give the audience a lot of compelling Easter eggs to suggest, oh, this is where the story might be headed next. It looks like they are removing him from the roster, MJF. It looks like they might be firing him. We all know it's a story. What's muddy is where it came from. The MJF thing, it seemed to stem from a real life feud with Tony Khan and AEW, and now they seem to have come to some arrangement where they can turn into an angle for TV. But the way they tell that story is going to be compelling. But can you convince people that it's real? No, if he's going to stand in the ring for 10 minutes and say whatever he wants, because they could easily rectify that. As far as other things, I mean, aside from a Pillman thing where he just literally shows up in WWE, what's he going to do? Show up in the new Ring of Honor? AEW owns that. We all know that. Shows up in New Japan. Maybe a bit more interesting. They have a working relationship with AEW. I'm not sure that people would really buy that either. That's the thing about having a working relationship with every company except for WWE, is that you can't really use the other companies to do like shoot type angles. F-Pop says, if Trios titles are introduced before Kenny's return, power rank these teams in terms of chances of winning. House of Black, Death Triangle, Eddie and LAX, Blackpool Combat Club. You have to add Cole and I guess Redragon there because Kenny's going to be with the Bucks. So I would say it should be Eddie and LAX. It wouldn't shock me if it was Blackpool Combat Club. It probably should be House of Black too. They need some titles, or they need to do something over there. Let's see here. Let me see if we can get a couple more quick ones in. The Anime Fan says, what is the darkest, most depressing thing you've seen live at a wrestling event? It's when Supreme got lit on fire, XPW 2001. Look it up. It's horrifying. I was there. Me and Larson were both there. Richard Ives says, should CM Punk be allowed to voice his political views on AEW? Do you think politics and wrestling should be kept separate? Absolutely. I think CM Punk should be allowed to express his political views. I think any wrestler should be allowed to. They just need to understand the consequences of their actions. If you show up wearing a shirt, for example, that is not of the popular culture opinion, your company is going to be pressured to remove you from the air. And that's just life. That you can call it what you want. You can call it cancel culture. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it fair or unfair. It doesn't matter. It's called the free market. If you show up wearing a shirt that people don't agree with, guess what? If enough pressure is applied to that company, they're going to pull you from the air. CM Punk obviously wore a shirt that plenty of people agreed with. He's done that several times now, including me. And he's just fine. So yeah, I think that wrestlers should be fine doing that, as long as they understand that if they express a point of view that the majority of people find offensive or wrong or incorrect or whatever, they're jeopardizing their career. So there you go. Let's see here. Deep Voice Dude says, is AEW having a major storyline about WWE/ex-WWE guys a good idea, or does it make them feel like a minor league promotion that is leeching off WWE star power? No, because I think everybody understands the situation. I think everybody knows that AEW is new, and so this is something that you do to add interest to your company. We'll end with this one. Zach Blackwood asks, why isn't Roman Reigns' current run compared to Triple H's reign of terror? Because Triple H was yielded a lot of power backstage, and everybody kind of knew that. Everybody knew that these ridiculous storylines he'd be in to ensure he kept the title was all his thing backstage, and it was at the cost of a lot of other sort of up-and-coming talent. And in fact, even now, if you listen to, any number of Bruce Pritchard podcasts, he'll say that. Like, yeah, Triple H didn't really like the RVD, didn't think he was over, even though the fans were just like wildly, into RVD. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Check out this video here. If you like this video, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notify bell to make sure you always get notified when we put up one of these Q&A question threads, and maybe your question will be answered here on the video. Yeah, take a look at this right here. It's a video I just did. I forget what it is. Oh, I think I looked at some silly WWE rumors, like Rhea Ripley is Viscera's daughter.